Good late Thursday, early Friday. Meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center right now, giving a look at that map across the region with that Doppler technology on there. You actually see some scattered showers, some heavy downpours there toward the Gulf Coast right now, especially in the Ward, a little bit there of Dixie County. Not a whole bunch over land yet, but it's a sign of some more things that come with that moisture. We had a fair amount of warnings on that Thursday here. On this Friday, we'll have storms around again. You just never know how many warnings we'll get, but we're going to have a lot of rain covered, a lot of storm acts. I don't know, a lot of the warnings on that Thursday, were definitely for some stronger acts, and didn't really have too many damage reports around as we were looking at things. So that was good news. That's why we didn't cut in, because looking at the situation, just right on the edge, there's some marginal severe now, for outdoor activities like high school football games, though. It doesn't even take, strong thunderstorms to be a problem. Any lightning, and that could be a big problem Friday night. There's a chance some of the storms could be on the weakening side there as we approach that if we have quite a bit during the day, but then some of those fields could get messed up with all that moisture around. So something to kind of be mindful of here for sure as we're kind of looking at things, tracking things. I know did have a little bit of a storm report activity there as we're looking into our South Georgia, Thomas County there. We had some damage, but overall, we didn't really have that. A number of severe warnings. Just didn't see enough to jump in with, coverage there. They're posting them on the different platforms there. But of course, as we're tracking things, Facebook there, Twitter/X. But, we'll be watching, we'll be tracking, obviously, a little bit more sensitivity to situations on this Friday ahead with all the high school football games. There were some that tried to get off there on Thursday in the Ward, North Central Florida. Just kind of seeing some acts and being impacted there toward the Gainesville area. Some delays, a postponement, having to be resumed, on Friday for one of the games over there. But the bulk of the acts will be on this Friday night, and, we'll just have to wait and see how things progress. It'll be an interesting storyline here. I know as we look back over the last 12 hours, I'll take that general thunderstorm risk off, but you see quite a bit of rain in spots. You see this red area in Baker County, north of our Lusty, 4+ inches. Northwest of Live Oak, over 3 inches there. Northwestern Alachua County, west of High Springs, bullseye there, over 3 inches. Precip, and then as we get into towards South Georgia, north of Thomasville, some areas over 4 inches. It's isolated. I mean, as you look northwest of Moultrie, some spots over 3 inches. So right in Tallahassee, it was, minuscule amounts in some spots. Other spots pick up about a half inch or so. But, as you get to word like Gainesville proper, first day of classes for the semester at UF, about a half inch in parts of Gainesville there. Ocala, not too much in town. They've been, so wet lately. Don't want to get too much rain there too quick. For Syrup Palm Coast, about a half inch. St. Augustine, there some spots closer to 3/4 of an inch. In Duval County, did get some spots, a couple inches of rain. Had a flash flood warning, but it's more about the urbanization there, with just the rain not having place to go, versus it being just an excessive amount. I mean, not as much here in Duval, couple inches in some of these purplish colors, versus you having 4 inches there north of Olustee, more rural, so more areas for water to drain, not as much concrete, not near as many folks, in terms of population being impacted. So that's kind of the storyline there as we're looking at the picture 12-hour rainfall totals nationally. I know in South Dakota we have a severe thunderstorm warning there, even a little bit of a hook there, some rotation on that. As we kind of broaden the view, there is a marginal risk out for areas in parts of Minnesota, Iowa, getting there into parts of Nebraska, Kansas, Colorado. You kind of get the idea. Wisconsin on that Friday. As we look here, the tropics, of course, we've been watching Hurricane Aaron. It's moving away. It had some impact on the East Coast, in terms of the rip currents. That was a big impact. It had a little bit of storm surge there up toward the Outer Banks of North Carolina, but it could have been way, way worse than it was. There's still a tropical storm warning toward parts of Bermuda, but, not just a terrible situation as it could have been, obviously. I know Nantucket right on the fringes of some tropical storm gust, but as we're tracking things there, but could have been way worse here with there. And I mean, as we're going to look here, I'll turn the radar off, turn the infrared satellite on, see how it's kind of transitioning there from a, full-fledged hurricane into something more extra tropical. Still a lot of wind with it there. as we're looking out in the Atlantic. But again, not something, that, was that impact like it could have been, obviously, which is some great news. 90-mile-an-hour max sustained winds there. The latest update from the Hurricane Center at 2 a.m. advisory. Storm surge, again, we had that concern toward the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Water levels remain elevated along the U.S. Mid-Atlantic and southern New England coast, but will gradually subside through Friday. So that rip current risk around now, even toward our local area on that Friday. So when it's not as stormy around and you have time to get to the beaches, you still got to be very vigilant, obviously, and that can still be deadly. So keep that in mind. But Aaron, we didn't hype it up for a reason. We knew that it was going to be something that was going to stay further off toward the east, and not be a huge deal. Nothing compared to so many systems here the last several years. Even though it was a big hurricane here, it takes up a lot of space. I go back 4 hours, a little more organized then versus now. But watch some other systems here, see how they evolve in the Atlantic Basin as we look ahead. Pulling some model guidance up, you kind of see probably another system develop here. It'll probably be called Farnon here pretty soon, as we're tracking things. But it's likely to recur maybe closer to Bermuda as we're looking and as we're tracking things up that way. I know. So that's kind of a storyline as we're monitoring things, as we're tracking the situation. Bermuda might have a, direct hit from a hurricane coming up next week, but it won't be here. And even they have a tropical storm warning still for that. As we're looking up toward Bermuda there, we're talking about, some gusts of tropical storm force now, but you see these icons indicate maybe a pretty powerful hurricane coming that way next week, according to one of the models, maybe early Monday even. It hadn't even developed yet, and it could develop very rapidly as we look at things, as we track things here in toward the weather center. So, you see these other icons. That's actually for a different system further back out here, but what could become Farnon very quickly is in toward this area right around where that red dot is, and that could become a hurricane very rapidly, but very quickly recurve, away from the U.S., but could be a direct hit on Bermuda according to some of these models. I mean, they're, saying that right now. We'll have to wait and see as we're looking out there in toward the next few days. Not even that far off, so kind of a heads up there. That's kind of concerning. Not part of the U.S. Bermuda, but still, folks with some interest out there. It's a very small place. So I've turned off the infrared satellite. But, folks there, I mean, it's 84. It's paradise when it's not, stormy for some at least. Maybe taking vacations over there, but it may not be the right time for that. We already had Aaron, but now Farnon probably going to develop here very quickly, and could be a problem for Bermuda before it recovers even further off toward the east there in the overall pattern. So now this other system here, the model, some of them are recurving it. I don't know, it kind of blends in with the other system. Plus, Aaron kind of all connects. There's a chance it could go further to the south here. We'll see. That some models have tried to show it hanging further south and then being so weak and eventually developing as it were to be so weak it doesn't curve and then it develops closer to Gulf. There's at least a small chance of that. This system here, which could be the G name, may not. But the one right here will become Farnon very quickly, it looks like, you see, as we're looking. I know, by the way, there was a hurricane with Aaron that we've been tracking here. Very carefully, just for, the size of it in case it did, wobble a little from North Carolina. But again, we were not too concerned. But there's something for a little while we were watching tonight toward. I know you guys probably don't even know where it is. I mean, it's not something that I would know right off, but way down in the globe here, toward something called the Drake Passage, there was a significant earthquake, and there's an evaluation as if there be any tsunami alerts for any part of the U.S. Luckily, that was not required there, in terms of that, because of where that is, it actually, there was at least an evaluation for the East Coast, but not needing it for the East Coast or the West Coast here, and that's some good news. So, a lot of, weather stories, right now more, for the U.S. anyway, more bark than bite, but doesn't mean that couldn't change very rapidly at points, so. Definitely important to watch things here as we're tracking things in toward the weather center. And there's a flood watch just north of our area, which is a sign here of, the concern that I've alluded to with some of that precip around here, not because of Aaron by any means, but just the overall pattern of front trying to come on in here. And this all could mess up the high school football games here as we're looking ahead toward Friday night. That could be a pretty big storyline. I have to be on, could be some significant concern with that, honestly. Not a guarantee because there's a chance we could have some of these storms more earlier on and then they, kind of have used, up all the available energy and then it's a little cooler and it might not be that bad. It might be some wet fields, some spots that are, depending on what kind of material, some fields a lot better than others, but could have some, holy type of fields out there depending on where you're at. Could cause some injuries even, but we shall see. This is 2 o'clock though, 3 o'clock on your Friday afternoon, 4 p.m. some storms, lightning in North Florida, 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m. You see maybe around Stark it's breaking up some on this, reflection here of the forecast model guidance, but things can always switch around, change pretty rapidly, obviously. But you send them more toward the I-95 corridor, the I-10 corridor with some storms that could delay things or cause even postponement, in the days ahead. But you see by 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, as we look, 10 o'clock, some areas definitely have problems. Don't know exactly where they'll be. I know you see out here, I know I see the model the other day, it was still in different spots. We don't know the precise spot where we're going to have the problems, but I just suspect, based on this, that some of our areas going to have, high school football games that have delays, maybe even get postponed, or maybe just get unfortunately canceled outright. Here they might start going a little and then just not able to be completed. Might not get much in. We shall see as we're looking here and as we're tracking. I'm gonna go to another one of these triple R. This is the 6 o'clock. You see even by the way lightning current, which shows up underneath. Let me take that off real quick. But this is the 6 o'clock view here on the 4Z H triple R. So a little more recent, but it didn't go out as far. And this tells storms around North Central Florida. So maybe, it's a situation this time of year, it might be more wishful thinking, but there's a chance, I'm kind of skeptical. It's probably pretty isolated, but, there's a chance some games might be able to get going here and be okay, but they don't have lightning, but they have the rain, so you need a poncho, but there could just be enough lightning around where they'll need a delay, even if it's not a really prevalent lightning maker that's heading light. If you're just inside and you hear wind, rumble, of thunder, okay, it's pretty far away, we're okay, but outside events have to take more precautions than that, unfortunately. It can disrupt things, but it's required. It's very necessary because it takes a little while for folks to get to shelter like a vehicle. That's not the best place you're going to be probably at immediate high school football games. It's not, it's not like it's college stadium, even then there's not always places, but, it's not like there's that many places to go in a storm here, especially if it's not severe tornadic. But, we're looking. Could have some severe thunderstorm warnings ahead on this Friday, though. Let me back this up. I'm going to take that off real quick or run this out and see what this run was showing. If we get this stuff earlier, it may lead to somebody not being quite as strong. This is 14Z, 15, so this is like around noon here. Let me zoom out a little bit here, and you see I'll move it around, and it's about 1 o'clock, 2 p.m., 3 p.m., 4, 5, 6. So you kind of get an idea of what could happen here. Some areas, some of these red dots. So just one example. It's probably not going to set up exactly right here, but there's like 4 inches of rain west of Worthington Springs on the forecast model. There's red areas indicative of multiple inches, but we shall see. And currently we actually have some thunderstorm acts, and this is kind of, generally this tells me we have so much moisture around, we're just going to kind of have the storms earlier and earlier. I saw this in the modeling, and this doesn't happen, maybe as much here, as it can. As we look back here, I know it's a situation here in the last several weeks or so, as we're tracking things. We haven't had the early development, just all the time here. But when we have stuff in the night developing, this means it's probably going to fill in quicker than what some of the models are showing. Some of the models have been jumping on board with this. We get more storm accident earlier on, and that can kind of weaken things and maybe be a little bit better for the high school games later on. We shall see. But that's the current view there. Right now, at 2 something in the morning, some storms around or at least heavy Saturday with a little bit of lightning. It's northeast of Horseshoe Beach, for instance. So this could all fill in here quicker than what the models are showing, and then maybe get out quicker. Maybe be something more prevalent, maybe not quite as strong as it could be, but still a few warnings not out of the question, even a flash flood warning here or there. And then you kind of have a lull for some areas in time for the games, assuming the fields are playable. It'd be good if you could kind of cover things up there on those fields. It's not like baseball though as much, but still I'd be kind of concerned that some of these fields are going to get too saturated here as we're looking and as we're tracking things. We'll just have to kind of wait and see. Sometimes these fields can kind of be just like sponges here. Some of them don't drain a lot better, and that would be something where things would be in a better spot if it's not actively storming around the times of the games. You don't have the lightning around. You had the storms earlier and the rain's already kind of drained off. But as you go ahead and look here and track things, we're just continuing to give you guys the latest here, obviously, in toward the Weather Center. Let me go ahead and pull on up here some of the graphical information right now. I know we're kind of trying to give you guys the very latest what we're dealing with the tropics. This is at 2 a.m. update from the Hurricane Center. That red area likely to be faring on pretty quickly as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here in toward the Weather Center. I know, maybe heading toward Bermuda. Aaron, we've talked about it a lot as the rip current maker. I mean, this next system could, prolong the rip current risk around here some. Will be South Sea, but then, as we look at that orange area, that could become another system. That one may go further south, and if it doesn't recurve, good evolve too quick, it could be something to watch late in the month. I mean, we're already at the 22nd, but I'm talking about over a week away, maybe toward the Gulf here, Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America, as we're tracking things. We just kind of have to be mindful of that. So again, we're going to go ahead and say the 2025 storm names. I know we've had some local Atlantic impacts. The monocoastal flooding starting to subside, but at high surface rip currents, still something we're watching. Farnon, the next name, to the D name after that, and then you have your tropical climatology. We're getting closer to peak season. The time we've had so many storms, over the decades impact, our area, our region of the country. Around September 10th, the peak season there. We've had storms like Irma around that time in Dora. So you just never know. Not seeing anything right off, but it's hard to get out there in the models more than like a week out. This time of year, things could start to become more active based on the meteorological pattern. Even I know it's been kind of active with Aaron. We could start to see even more storms here that become an issue and that have a more favorable pattern to, maybe hit the U.S. as we look ahead later into September. We shall see, but, it's kind of just on the fringe of the science here, right? Saying that even because we're talking about maybe a La Nina, that could become an issue. And then if we deal with that, then that can lead to, more development. El Nino is something where when you have that, it's generally wetter around and you're in a pattern here where you have maybe more severe weather, in the winter and the like, and in spring here locally, but not as much tropical weather. But La Nina, is something where that, could be more about the hurricanes here. It doesn't always play out like that, but that's just something we look at honestly. We've been in a neutral pattern here at points, and, it's not something that, it only takes one storm like Andrew and 92. So it's just a little thing we look at. Doesn't mean anything's going to happen. It's been so active lately. It's the last several years. I mean, going all the way back to 2016. It's almost like every other year, we're watching one or multiple storms maybe hit, our region here. So, we're kind of almost just breaking the patterns here in some ways. I mean, not totally, but definitely it's been so active lately. I mean, as we go ahead and look at the rainfall forecast here, you can see southeast Georgia, multiple inches here. There's a flood watch just closer to Savannah. And you see some of the breadcrumbs of that there, even toward Brunswick and in Camden County. I know you see toward the First Coast, a good bit of rain as well. A little less further west, but still quite a bit of precip here. Maybe some type of spin evolving there around the homegrown area of spin. we'll have to watch, but nothing in the outlooks for that right now. Tropical weather outlooks, you see quite a bit of rain alerts under the banner there for the interactive radar, which is available on cloudweather.com flash radar there. But you see quite a bit of rain toward Oklahoma. That'll be something to be watching out there as well. As we show you, the high school football week 1, it's an exciting time, but we gotta use caution here. I'm a little bit, maybe just a little bit more optimistic than I was even, not too long ago, looking at the modeling for some of these games, because I think we could get so much moisture earlier on if this field's hold up all right. And Bradford's a pretty good field. Folks literally have played it over the years. When, their fields aren't in good enough shape, people will come there to play games. So that's some good, news that if we get the storminess out of the way earlier on, probably have a pretty good field condition here is what I would think. Games on the radio there, WAG 106.3 FM Stark. You can listen to it there if you're not going, and then I believe there's also a live stream of it on I think you have to pay for this, but NFHS Network is what that is online there. The NFHS Network. So that's what we're looking at as we're tracking things. But yeah, storms remain impossible. Low 80s there, 60% chance of rain. I have 70 for today itself, so there's a chance, not a guarantee, but I was thinking earlier on we're going to really have the storms right around game time. We still could have them. They could still be a big problem. Some backyards they probably will be, but if we get the storms earlier on, the atmosphere might not have enough time and, not be able to recharge enough for them to be as volatile. So, we shall see. Seeing storms at 2 in the morning, 2:30 in the morning gives me a thought that that's what could happen. So 60 for the game for the rain chance. Low 80s, though. That's all depending on how the precip pattern sets up. Get as much, it could be warmer then. If you get quite a bit, like, several inches and we stay cloudy, then maybe it's the upper 70s or so. But I know just probably we could idea to bring a poncho in case we have some lingering moisture, but we don't have the lightning, so then the game would be able to get, go on, continue to play, versus if we have, lightning around, and that's the problem. And that's why, have the delays, and that's the danger. We've had, you have to go back a little bit, but we've had problems. We've had people lose their life on football fields over the decades, here in Florida, because of lightning, whether it's in a game, practice, or the like. So, gotta be really cautious, really mindful whenever thunder roars. You gotta go indoors here. Talking about high school football and like, you just always gotta be really careful. So, low 80s, 60% rain chance there. Again, I'm maybe hoping the worst will be, in terms of the lightning will be over by then, but there's no guarantee. Some areas could be getting worse right at game time. So I just this pattern makes me think we're going to have when we have the storms earlier on, and then we may start to see some decay by the time a game acts and gets going here. Then we might be in better shape, but there's no guarantees with that. Just you have to remain alert whenever thunder roars. You got to go indoors here. Baker County Wildcats at Bradford Tornadoes coming down from Baker County. Obviously, the Glen St. Mary, McClinney area, Baker County, and such a huge rivalry. I mean, so many people at this game here, and hopefully the weather does not interfere, because there's a chance. I put 60%. That doesn't mean 60% chance of lightning, because there's a chance it could just be the lingering moisture after you've already had the storms earlier on, and then if the fields are good enough shape to be able to play it. So, and this field generally, the material they use for that, I know generally is a little bit more of a pattern here where it's been in better shape than a lot of the other ones surrounding. So, in the region, literally there's been games here where people come to start to play on because of the field being in better shape here versus other spots because of the investment made. But as you're looking here, storms remain impossible. So obviously we have lightning around within a certain radius here, 8 miles, give or take. Some folks use different ones, but then that's the problem. You have to wait 30 minutes to the last strike within 8 miles, give or take. I know FSU's rules have been 8 miles. Some folks will use 10 or 6 or, I'm not sure. SAA, I know they, probably have certain rules that they use for their officials and, emergency management, they'll use certain rules. But generally 8 miles is kind of where, a baseline there a lot of folks will use. So, gotta be aware of that. That's the real potential. Some games are gonna have big problems. I mean, within our 62 counties, there's almost a guarantee that we're gonna have some games here, that are going to have significant delays or even postponements or cancellations. For our folks here in Stark, that's where we're at. That's where we're focusing on this game in particular. Bradford alum here talking, and this is why I'm focusing on this game. Not necessarily gonna have a delay here in Stark, but it's possible other places, somewhere in our areas, we're gonna have big, big, big problems here because of the storminess, having to push things off, change the schedule, maybe even having to, there's a chance that some of the games even get pushed. If you were to postpone things, you never can count on the weather this time of year to cooperate 100%, even though it's not a tropical system, so that's good. There's a chance that you might just have to kind of finish things up. Maybe Monday night might be alternative here, as I'll see in a moment, with the forecast being a little bit drier toward, maybe even a lot drier toward that time slot before we start to have storms again for next weekend. Maybe more problems for high school football, next weekend, unfortunately. Doesn't mean we'll have the lightning, but with rain, the rain chances look, like they're going to be going up there based on the longer range models. We're always watching things for the 62 counties, always on for any tornado warning storms. Haven't had any lately, though, which is a good thing. So I'm probably going to jinx and we'll have some road warning here on your Friday as we're looking. But we're trying to give you guys the very latest here with everything. As I go ahead and see you, there is that fog potential around, actually. I haven't talked about this too much lately, so we just put that up on the screen. Maybe not needing full-fledged advisories, but you just gotta slow down and give yourself extra time to reach your destination. And, using your low beam headlights is key. So that's kind of a storyline there as we're looking at all of that. Let me go ahead and keep moving along here. You can see that extended forecast. Again, the storms could impact more high school football games on your Friday night. Some of them already were impacted here. Thursday night, a handful are trying to get going. And on the Gainesville TV market, there are a couple. One got, going to finish like at 5 o'clock on your Friday. And the other, I think they finished around midnight. So, yeah, not great. And on Friday night, some areas are going to have big problems. Don't know exactly where they'll be. Some spots are good. It'll be a little cool with the clouds around and the light might not be bad. But other areas are going to be a problem here. And you got to be ready. You got to be ready to get inside there, away from windows, even if that's in your vehicle. If it's not a severe storm, you just got to get away from that imminent lightning danger here. As we're looking, I know a lot of these places you're not going to have a a spot for 1,000 people to go, right off if there's like a severe thunderstorm warning or something. But you got to be ready to take action. Is what I'm saying here. Storms could impact, high school football games. They're going to impact some of them. Maybe we'll get lucky and more action with the rain earlier on, and it allows things to be more stabilized later on. Still, some fields could be unplayable, though, depending on if a few spots get like 4 inches or something. And that's, a problem, potentially. So, as you look Saturday, pretty high rain chance as well. Sunday starts to drop a little, and you see a little bit of coolish air trying to get in with, drier air. Which, you see the highs a little lower the weekend. That's because of more cloud cover and rain. But as you look toward like Monday morning, 72, and then by Tuesday, Wednesday morning, you see a little bit of a dip. We have a boundary, and we're trying to get a little cooler area. And I know more of that, is going to get into South Georgia, where some spots will get upper 60s for lows coming up. That's, first time we see that in a while here towards some of our South Georgia communities. But we'll go with 70 for that low on Wednesday. But by Thursday, you see more moisture coming back in. And unfortunately, in the wrong time and time for high school football and time for college football. Could even, it's really, really early to say this. I mean, we can't give you the precise details on tonight's games for high school. Just, you never know. Some spots will be okay and some won't. But, could have problems for next weekend here, like FSU and Alabama. There could be weather problems because of lightning is what it would be from, more than likely. I mean, it could be because of the heat if they don't have the storms. But the lightning, if we have the higher rain chance around, like what the models are indicating, that could be problematic and that could lead to issues here. We have other high school football action next weekend, but then college games as well. Of course, just all over, and you got to be prepared for delays. I know, I'll say it way early here. I mean, we're seeing this way ahead of time. I know we have week 0 college football this week, but the big FSU Alabama game, there's a chance it may get put on a different network other than ABC. If there's like a 3-hour delay or something, they're not gonna I don't think keep that on ABC. It'll get bumped to an alternative lower channel. Why LSU Clemson takes ABC, I would think, unless they somehow regionalize it, but that's not something that's generally being done anymore too much in, college football coverage. But again, that's something to be thinking about here way down the road. I don't know. I haven't looked at the forecast up in North South Carolina for that game. There could be issues then too, but in the afternoon, lightning is, a time frame. That time frame is one that's more prevalent for some lightning danger here. So, gotta keep that in mind. That's way away. We've got to focus on, what's in front of us, and that's the high school game that could have big problems here. Some will be okay. Some are going to be fine, I would think, because of the scattered nature. But some are going to have big problems. They're going to have, lengthy delays here, very long delays there. We'll try that again, lengthy delays here, unfortunately, though. It's the, wording, maybe even postponements, cancellations, but that will be okay. So you try to play them, and then you're ready to take your precautions if the weather turns, inside, away from windows. That's what you got to try to do. As we go ahead and look here, I'll move away from graphics real quick. I want to see a storm in South Dakota. This is a destructive tag. It just came up in my system. I'm talking about baseball-sized hail in South Dakota here in the middle of the night. This apparently was reported there 6 miles south of that community of Howard, South Dakota, at 1:35 a.m. Central. So that's a pretty nasty storm, middle of the night there in parts of South Dakota there, the north central part of the country. But as we get back to our local 7-day, again, high school football, going to have problems here. And the next weekend's Labor Day weekend. And as of now, not talking about a tropical system locally, we'll watch things as we've talked about, but there could be storms around that have an impact. So we shall see. We have to just be very mindful here. You got to watch that lightning. Can be deadly. It's not like a big hurricane's coming your way, and then you're seeing, all the precautions, all the postponements, evacuations, but lightning, can really be very sneaky and very dangerous, and we gotta be careful. We gotta keep folks safe. That lightning, could be big problems. Some areas of flooding, folks could have some issues of that too on your Friday in isolated areas. It's really scattered. Something that's, just pops up and then you have a problem here. So be ready for those delays, for that, being necessary. Everybody needs to be watching here. The meteorologist here in the region will be watching, obviously, and then I know, these are big events here for the communities, and we don't want anything tragic to happen with the lightning. That's what we got to be really watching out for here. The weather hazard, we have, some of these games will be okay. Some need a poncho. Maybe you don't end up having a lightning close enough, but you have some rain. But others will have problems where folks will be going to their cars, really trying to make sure to get away from the danger. Though by then I'm open to instability to be, kind of slacking off some. But we could even have some games with severe thunderstorm warning encompassing the stadiums, which obviously is a big concern. So, again, we'll be watching, we'll be tracking. Just stay tuned here to Cloud to Weather. We'll pop in if we need to, because this is when everybody's outside, probably between all of our counties, some teams will be, away or home or whatever. Some might be out of the area even playing. But it's, one of the higher points of the year you're going to have, especially the season home openers and the like. Some of these rivalries, one of the more favorite times for people to be outside all year long, between different communities, and we don't want anything bad to happen with the lightning, with the adverse weather conditions. So be staying aware, and clutter.com/radar, a good place to go. But we'll cut in if we need to. We'll post up if it's not enough to cut in. So just please stay tuned here, because I'm kind of concerned. I don't want people to get caught off guard by this as we're tracking things. It's not a hurricane coming our way. We've had games moved around because of hurricanes. It's not a, squall line coming our way. It's not a tornado watch or anything like that, as we're looking here. We're just talking about pop-up stuff, maybe a little more widespread. Maybe it'll move out in time for the game action for some. For some, it probably won't, and there'll be problems, and you got to be ready here. You need to be paying attention. It's not something you want to have to worry about. You want to just enjoy your game, after the week. It's maybe been a long week or whatever, and you want to enjoy football. But instead, you got to be paying attention to the weather. You got to be ready. With that lightning within 8 miles or so, it's time to take precautions. because, it takes a few minutes to evacuate a stadium and get folks, out of those metal bleachers. I mean, my goodness, how much more dangerous of a spot can you be in? I mean, even the field, sometimes the open field actually can be more dangerous. Folks wearing helmets. I mean, sometimes it's pretty easy for those folks to get to the locker rooms, but in the fans, pretty high up in the bleachers, and then you have a lightning strike, and you just gotta hope, that everybody's in a better spot. You gotta have the protocol in play to get everybody in a better spot by then. So that's gonna do it. Have a great night. Stay safe, and we'll be on here as warranted, obviously, watching these storms around. Again, just have a great night.